we have 4 graphs on the second page. And as you look at these graphs, different things are going on. So what you'll notice is in these 4 graphs, graph B and graph D are always going up. Graph A is always going down, and graph C goes up and then goes down. And we're supposed to answer some questions based on these graphs. So in graph A, does the curve have a positive or negative slope? And why?
It's a negative slope.
Negative. Why?
Because as the price goes up, the quantity goes down.
Okay. So in A, it has a negative slope. Because as the price goes up, the quantity goes down. You can also tell by the curve, or the it goes down from left to right. And that's how you can see visually that it's a negative slope. Not talking about what was on the screen with the fact that we're talking about price and quantity of gas. So in A, negative slope, because as your price goes up, the amount goes down. In part B it says, why is this curve more steep upward as the time goes on? And then what's the domain and the range? So why is it more steep? It says the distance from the starting line of a runner is a function of time. So somebody's running. Why is it more steep as time goes on? Eric? It takes time to get up to your fastest speed, number 1. Okay, so back here in part B, it takes time to hit max speed. For the domain and the range, and this one for part B, domain means what are the x's, and so your domain is where your x's are bigger than or equal to 0, meaning as you look at the graph, your time starts at 0 seconds and then keeps on going. That's what greater than or equal to 0 means. So off to the side here, x is bigger than or equal to 0 means everything bigger than or equal to 0 is okay for my domain or my x's. And for my range, which are the y values, what I would say is actually the same thing. I would say greater than or equal to 0 because the distance that I am away from the starting point is 0 when I start out, but as I run, I get farther and farther away, so you can have any positive value after that. So your range is anything bigger than or equal to 0. So here's my range, and here's my, this is the range, and then this is the domain. So domains are your x's, range is your y. Part C says when time is 0, why is the height of the cannonball not 0? John?
It's not being shot from the ground.
It's not being shot from the ground. If you ever watch any of the old movies, they have the cannons, and oftentimes, like if it's on a ship, or even if it's not on a ship and it's on wheels, the cannon has its opening probably 4 or 6 feet off the ground. So you're not shooting this cannonball off the ground. So the cannonball is not shot off the ground. And then it says, talk about the domain of the function and then describe the range. So if I talk about the domain, remember the domain is the time. So if I'm talking about the domain for the cannonball, what we're talking about here is there's a limited amount of time. The cannonball is going to hit the ground some point. So the domain is 0 until the ball hits the ground. I don't know how much time that is, but whatever that would take, 5 seconds, 3 seconds, whenever it hits the ground, that's the domain. How many seconds was that? Done. For the range, which is the height, the range is going to go from 0 up to the max height the ball reaches. So at some point in time, the ball's at the top. And you can notice this anytime you throw anything up in the air, you throw something up, and then it comes back down to the ground. This is the very common curve, an upside down parabola, that marks that kind of motion. Okay, so we use parabolas a lot in math, and when you take physics, you'll see it all the time. You'll see this formula 1/2 gt squared v0t plus h0, and it's talking about the motion of any object on our planet. And then the last one says, why does the range of this function include negative values? And what they're talking about in the last graph in part D is they're talking about the profit from a restaurant is based on the number of meals that you serve. And so when we talk about the function and why the range is what it is, in this graph, down here, this is where no meals are served, but you paid for the food you make. So you buy all these ingredients, and it costs you money. And until you sell anything, that's a loss. So that's why your profit is negative. You had to buy the ingredients to make the food, and that's a problem. And over here, you sold a lot of meals. And so now the offset is that you made money from selling your meals. You could pay for what you had to buy to make those meals, and anything left over is a profit. And so this part in the middle here that they're talking about, where you hit 0, this is your break-even point. That's where the amount of money that you spent on buying your food to make the meals equals how much you've sold for the meals.